Hello.
Wasn't that a good picture? Jeff, I made a couple of documentaries, and I came to the conclusion that when you make a feature film, you write the script and then you shoot it. With the documentary, I found that you shoot it and then you write the script. Is that what you did?
There is definitely truth to that, yeah. Except I'm always shooting, writing, and editing the entire time.
All at the same time?
Yeah. And there's actually a sense of a screenplay with lots of cards all over the walls in 3 acts. So there's a lot of similarities.
But you kept shooting and cutting at the same time?
Well, I would shoot story, and then I would do a lot of temp visuals, because it's like a radio play.
Yeah.
And once I liked the story beats, then I would spend expensive money and bring in my cinematographer and a large crew and do the expensive recreation type shooting, things like that you wouldn't want to just go shoot. You want to know it's going to work.
How did you decide, what made you decide to have her tell the story?
Oh, that was easy. When the scandal broke in 2006, I didn't know what a J.T. LeRoy was, nor had I heard of the scandal, nor had I read the books. But I love Truth is Stranger Than Fiction stories, and a journalist friend of mine, Paul Cullum, turned me onto the story. And it had generated this massive amount of ink, and I read all of these accounts, these think pieces. And I said to myself, wow, there has to be more to this story than we're not hearing, because there was one voice glaringly missing. And that, of course, was the voice of the author on and off the page, Laura Albert. And I said, wow, I would love to hear her tell the story. And I sent her my film, The Devil and Daniel Johnston. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, its central theme is the intersection of madness and creativity. And that very much spoke to her. And then she decided she would share her story for the very first time with me. She'd held her story back.
That's fascinating. And she's, you sort of let us in on what's happening without setting it up. It just sort of happens.
Yeah, well, she's telling the story in a first person, and the only rule is to keep her in the moment, and there's this forward motion of the storytelling. She's also a great storyteller, I came to learn. I did not know this. I knew she was a great writer because I read her books. But there's always that risk when you do these interviews, if someone actually is a good storyteller, and she turned out to be a great storyteller. Yeah.
And how did Brett Ratner get involved? How did you get the money to do this, or did somebody ask you to do it?
No, this was an idea that I went shopping around, actually, for a couple of years. Nobody wanted to pay for this. It was always skepticism. Oh, is anyone really going to go see a movie about a writer? And I was like, well, I think storytelling is a valid art. It's what movies are about. Anyway, I thought it was a pretty large scandal. I thought it had a lot of interesting aspects. I thought somebody would pay for it, and eventually Vice came in first, and then Molly Thompson at A&E Films joined up, and I took a meeting over at Brett's place, and it turns out Rat Pack Films has a great documentary division, and
They do, yeah.
he lit up like a candle as soon as I pitched him this idea, and then we were off to the races.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, there was a very interesting thing you did. You saved till later in the picture to tell us that she'd been molested as a child.
Yes.
Which sort of changes the whole picture. The whole story suddenly takes on another life.
Mm-hmm.
And what made you decide to put it quite late in the story?
This was an idea that I had where it was a literary idea. It was a literary holdback. I did a holdback in The Devil and Daniel Johnston as well, and I saw the power of the holdback. I saw the power of it in other documentaries like Capturing the Freedmans, and I saw the power in that. And what happened was, once I found out her tragic backstory, which became these Super 8 moments of the Laura Albert story, the unknown story, they became Super 8 rewinds, and that's one story, and it's going backwards. And then the A story, the saga of J.T. LeRoy, is going forwards, and at the very end, it comes together, and hopefully we have a whole person. So it's the inciting incident, and the inciting incident to me had to go last. But anyone paying close attention in the first act will know that it's all foreshadowed, this sexual abuse.
Well, there's that shot you have with when all the Barbie dolls are sitting with their rear end up in the air.
That's, yes.
Gives you a little bit of a hint.
Yeah. I think
There's
you
something
catch that
skewed.
something was not right.
Right.
And all the themes of her books and life and the fiction that she wrote, it was sexual abuse, physical abuse, and gender fluidity. So that was all in there. And then her weight issues and her telephone hotline addictions that I came to learn were a manifestation of this early inciting incident, this young abuse.
It's fascinating. I did a documentary on Tom Petty,
Oh, really?
and I found out that he had been abused by his father, been beaten. And I decided, everybody said, put it on at the beginning. I said, no, I think we have to wait until he's famous. Because then the audience will care.
Mm-hmm.
In the story, he gets famous, you know what I mean? So I understood why you held it back.
Oh, good.
And it was very powerful when you find out.
When I was in the editing room, there were people saying, you know, do you really want to end that? And, you know, I said it has to go there. The second we put it there, first of all, it was an idea that I had. It was on the wall, and then my editor, Michelle, and I, we finally just did it. And we looked at each other, and we were like, that's where it will live. And then somebody gave some notes. We tried it elsewhere, and you know, the movie just tanked. It just fell apart. It only worked where it lives, and that's where it was meant to be.
Well, that's the way it is with pictures, you know. Did you preview it? Did you do test previews or anything like that?
Toward the end, I did many test screenings at the Rat Pack room with lots of friends, and I brought everybody in. And what I've always found is it's not necessarily the notes you hear, but you're just feeling the picture, feeling the room, feeling the time. And this picture was 10 or 20 minutes longer at one point. I made some harsh decisions. It had to come down to an hour 50, which was the magic number for The Devil and Daniel Johnston.
Well, it's perfect length. It's not too long. It's not too short. It's very good. You make only documentaries. You've never made a fiction film, have you?
I've not formally directed a fiction film, but I have written screenplays, and there's one that just got made with Liev Schreiber and Naomi Watts called The Leader that I wrote with Jerry Stahl a number of years ago.
That's interesting. What was the first documentary you made?
Well, technically I will say it was half Japanese, The Band That Would Be King. That was 1993, its release. And that got a theatrical art house release. And that's a 16 millimeter film. And it's interesting to look at now because I looked at a lot of my heroes' early films from who made documentaries, Kubrick and Scorsese, and it had a big effect on me. But I look at it now and I say, wow, the band is way better than the film.
What was the most difficult thing about this film, would you say? The most difficult?
Oh, well, that's actually an easy answer because it's the most complex story I've ever taken on.
Yeah.
Because of the number of characters. Laura playing herself, Speedy, JT, Terminator, then of course she's creating Savannah and Aster and Thor. It's a lot of characters, it's a big cast. And then the backstory and the structure, once again, the A story and the B story, her backstory interwoven structurally with the saga. It was complex to even understand what happened for myself to try to make it clear for an audience. That was the challenge, and it took 2 years.
Well, the first time I saw it, I had the impression it was like these things, she kept creating new characters, and you didn't really comment on it, you just let it happen.
Sure.
And I thought that was very, very smart. It was funny, too, because you say, wait a second, another one?
Yeah. Well, I learned the power of that. Well, first of all, it's a true story, it happened. And The Devil and Daniel Johnston has this rhythm that you just can't believe what he's going to do next. And you're just like, no. And you, 5 minutes later, no way. What? No. And I felt that already in my past film. This story just had that. And I think if you just let it go, it's like a locomotive. It's going forward. And hopefully you don't buy popcorn or go to the bathroom.
Well, I love that about it, that you didn't explain it, you let it just happen. You didn't say this person had multiple personality disorder and all that. You just let it happen. She's talking now, she's inventing another person. And I love that about it.
Well, thank you, because the whole idea is with this subjective style, which I did not invent. I love The Kid Stays in the Picture, Brett Morgan's film. James Toback's Tyson is brilliant. Errol Morris did, of course, The Fog of War and The Unknown Known. These are subjective films. They're a smaller category, but it creates an interactive, immersive experience where the audience can think for themselves and judge. Yeah. And then it just has some motion that goes forward that I find fascinating. And it's immersive.
Yeah. Was Laura, how was she during the making of the picture? Was she herself, or was there other characters came into it?
Well, no, this is what happened. I mean, she's the subject, I'm the documentarian. I prepared for 6 months for what became an 8-day in a row interview where we linearly went through her life from childhood to the end, knowing.
In 8 days?
Yes, it was massive. That's a lot of days for an interview subject.
Yeah.
And she came to tell. She wanted to make this movie, and she wanted to finally tell, and she shared everything. Nothing was off the table, and she shared all of her deceit. And it was this very organic journey filled with deceit, and she was as marveled at it as anyone else. She couldn't even believe it was happening as it was happening, because she could see her, she likes telling these tales. So when she felt like, I need to tell you, I'm at the table with Gus Van Sant and I'm Speedy, she's happy to do the British voice in the interview, or perhaps the voice of the boy, JT. So it was fascinating.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating the way how she created JT LeRoy, and how she sort of dressed him, and it was a girl who was playing boy, and I thought it was a very sexy character.
Well, it was very Warholian, which was called out back in the day. You know, the wig, the hat, and the sunglasses.
Yeah.
And in fact, I came to learn, it's not in the film because the scene wouldn't live, but Andy Warhol, when pop art broke here at the Ferris Gallery in California, in LA, and exploded, he had to go on the road, and he didn't want to go on the road, and he sent out a factory person, an actor named Alan Maget, who looked like Warhol, and he went to the University of Utah. And it's a little footnote in Warhol history, but I found it fascinating. And they flew in with Paul Morris. He showed a film, lectured on pop art, and then went to a couple other cities. They went to Oregon, they went to Syracuse, and anyway, a few months later, a kid from the college paper who picked him up at the airport thought it was fishy. He snapped this photo of Alan Maget. He's like, because there wasn't a lot of media, you didn't have the internet. So, well, if someone shows up and says, I'm Andy Warhol, I guess you're Andy Warhol, right? Anyway, they got exposed, and I have all the headlines, and Warhol was labeled, quote unquote, a hoax. And that's what happened at that moment. And Laura makes a Warhol reference in her film.
Now that you've seen it, now that people have seen it, what's the reaction been to the picture, basically?
Let's ask the audience, what was the reaction to the picture?